Ladies and gentlemen, we're about ready to begin. If you'll please find your seats.
I got some calls today from some concerned folks over in Calhoun, worried that their water was being poisoned, and that Destin water users wanted them to test the water because some private company had come through and was attaching water testing kits to everybody's mailboxes and saying, "Test your water, send it in to us." But they didn't say who they were, and so everybody was calling me saying, "What is this? What is?" It's a scam to try to sell water filters.
Filters, yeah.
And everybody said, "Is this Destin water?"
Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to speak on an agenda item, if you'd please fill out a blue card. This does not include the public hearing section of the program. Anyone's wanting to speak during that. And if you turn the card into Ray, our city clerk, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Destin City Council for February 5. And we will begin with our invocation. Will the Reverend Barry Carpenter of the Destin United Methodist Church please come to the podium for us? Thank you.
Let us pray. Sovereign and gracious God, we thank you for this wonderful city called Destin, for the honor to live here, for the friends and families that are here. I pray your blessing upon this whole city. May you favor us with your mercy and your kindness. We pray for grace upon these leaders who make decisions. I pray that we all recognize the possibilities and the potential when we work together. Remind us when we dwell together in unity, the wonderful things that can happen. And I pray, Lord, for all of our problems, that you will give us a sense of perspective and to know that we can solve them together. I pray for those who are most vulnerable in our city, especially children and the elderly and the poor. For those who have no voice, may there be those who rise to speak for them. Above all, make us grateful. Help us to be thankful. Help us to be kind. Give us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I pray this in the strong name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Councilmember Marler, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, would you like to approve the agenda or make changes to any portion of it?
I have Ron Sandsted's going to speak under item 4D, the airport road plan, and he may take a bit longer than 3 minutes. He has 8 photos he'd like to show, so I'd like to add him, and I'm going to invite Alan French under my name for a brief presentation about his organization.
Excuse me. Any other changes or comments? Not seeing any. I'll accept the motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, yes. Are there there any changes to the minutes? Any suggested changes by council members? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? Not seeing any, I call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. Ray, got it. Under special presentations this evening, we have a presentation, Preserve Tree and Public Access to Harbor Lane Right-of-Way. Mr. Tim Kruger, would you like to come up to the podium, please? Ms. Lejeune, did you have any introductory remarks on this?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the quickest I've ever got up here. This is great. So, council members, women, and mayor and staff, my name is Tim Kruger. I live at 15,500 Emerald Coast Parkway, Unit 1205. My future home is the subject in question, 604 Harbor Lane. So I want to be respectful of your time, but just to give you a little bit of information, the first thing in your package behind the speaker's page is a parcel map. The red line is in fact our property. Immediately above it is the right-of-way in question. Picture is old, it's 8 years old I guess now. Doesn't really show the road and the gate, the chain and things that are there now, but it still gives you a pretty good representation. The next package is my due diligence package. The prior owner, Merlin Allen and Mrs. Allen, and Merlin was probably a friend of mine, probably a lot of friend of yours too. Unfortunately, Merlin succumbed to cancer, and I bought the lot from Widow Allen, if you will. John Forrester and Keith Howard were her agents, as Merlin, as you probably know, worked for Mr. Howard. So this was in my due diligence package, and there was a picture very similar, hey, there it is right there, very similar to, almost identical to what I'm proposing tonight. And as you'll see, there's supporting documentation, there's a permit and so forth signed by Mr. Casella back in his day. But as I interfaced with staff, it became apparent that I had to go back in front of you. So again, I thought all of this was already taken care of, but apparently not. Speaking of staff, you're going to see a lot in here, a lot of Dear Davids. That's David Campbell. I want to take just a minute and say all of the staff I interfaced with, David Campbell, Joe Bodie, Lance Johnson of the Park Department, Ray Bailey over here, Tim Pete and Paul with the signs, Hank Willard before he retired. I mean, the staff was great. And I mean, it honestly felt more like I was dealing with a business than a government. So thank you. It was a very good experience. So as we came in, I've got some pictures here, and this is a no parking right-of-way. It is a pedestrian access to the water. I don't want to use the word park because Lance Johnson has made it very clear that it's not a park. So it is a public access to the water, in case y'all wanted to build a bridge or something, I don't know. But anyway, so there's numerous times, we find when myself and my family come up there, we find the right-of-way blocked. And when we say, hey, you can't park there, I kind of get the, I've been doing this for 30 years routine. And so, I explain to them kind of how the cow ate the cabbage, and they move, but it's been frustrating. So you see the cars there. And then we came in, we found one day, and it was like, ironically, the day after I asked these fellows to move with the pickup truck and the silver car, the gate was, the chain was pried off from there. It wasn't my workers. They all know where the secret key is and all of that. Immediately following that, or 6 days later, we had trespassers. They turned over the portalet and some stuff like that. Here's the police report. Not a big deal. But it's important to know we have had our boathouse broken into. It was burgled a year ago this week. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of you, trying to be respectful of your time there. But I put a deer camera after my boathouse was broken into, and you'll see some pictures like that, who's ever running this thing. You will see plenty of, there's people just walking around my dock. I have more no trespassing signs on this dock. Keep going. I have more no trespassing signs on this dock than the bay. You know, if you know that place where they do the weddings and you see all these signs on there. I used to think when I went by, I said, that looks ridiculous. Why do they need all those signs? Well, now I know why. But these two fellows were just having a good time on my property. And you know, this was Christmas night. They weren't workers. And you can see my jet skis are down here. They seem to be eyeing, that's it. They seem to be eyeing, you know, my property. So I decided to put a deer camera out on the right-of-way to see what I found. Mind you, this is the dead of winter, and these pictures did not come out very good, but I mean, there are, trust me, there are people walking here. That's what triggered the camera and the infrared flash on it. So on 1/21/18, just earlier this year, around 11:08, some guys were walking there. Now these guys, you can see clearly, these guys certainly appear to be fishermen, and I believe they probably were fishermen. I'll remind you, I guess, if you think like a burglar, if you're going to rob something on the water, you probably ought to carry around a fishing pole. It's pretty good cover. I mean, a fishing pole gives you the right to walk anywhere around the water at any time of day or night because I'm fishing. But we'll assume they're fishermen. The next guys weren't fishermen, and again, all you can see a little past that, you see the shoes right there. And you see the silhouette there. So this is on January 25th. This is 11 p.m., and certainly not carrying any fishing equipment or anything like that. And they were there till, I think, around 11 p.m. on that note. So there's people, again, the dead of winter. There's folks going in on the city right-of-way, which I'll remind you is a dawn to dusk. So this is why I want to secure the property. Now, I know as a council, you're going to want to talk to my adjoining neighbors. So I took the liberty of contacting Mr. Paul Tanaka. He's my neighbor immediately, well, it's kind of a flag-shaped yacht, a lot, but he's at 606. So he wrote this. Hey, you're skipping ahead of me now. That's my clothes. Go back. You're stealing my thunder. But no, a little further. That one's for Tuffy. Anyway, yeah, right in there. But basically, Mr. Tanaka says, you know, I wholeheartedly endorse Mr. Kruger's right-of-way proposal. I'm a non-primary resident. I've dealt with trespassers, vandals accessing my property over the years, little fear of recourse given my frequent absence. In years past, I've arrived to find everything from shattered beer bottles in the pool and the jacuzzi to fishing tackle, et cetera, all over my seawall. Proposed plan serves as a deterrent to trespassers and also an aesthetic facelift as otherwise neglected area. So Mr. Tanaka's on board. Mr. Odom, I did not see him come in, but Mr. Odom, my neighbor on the opposite side, has given me his verbal support, and hoping he'd be here tonight. Now, I know you can't put up a gate anywhere in this city without somebody wondering about the fire department. Right, Tuffy? So, pardon me, Councilman Dixon. So I went ahead and reached out to Chief Sasser, and he also, in your packet, you'll find a letter where he has no problem with my gate, and he told me about some really cool new stuff that they push a button, the gate opens, and so we're going to certainly put that on there for the safety of all of us. So in closing, this is a plan designed by Callie Barker, who also thought was going to be here tonight. But Callie basically came up with a plan, which again is pretty similar, almost identical to what we thought we had. It preserves each and every tree. Not a single tree, no matter the size, is removed for this plan. It preserves every inch of waterfront for the public to use, and yet allows me to basically secure my property for the safety of my family. So I would humbly request that you approve it, and if you have questions, I'll take them at this time.
Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been down to this property to look at what was going on. And looks like this photo here of what I'm looking at, looks like that is where the asphalt is currently at now, is it not?
Well, it does. Mr. Bodie made it very clear, Mr. Campbell, that my gate has got to be inset 10 more feet. In the event that someone is parked in front of my gate, it won't block Mr. Tanaka's access. So I'm not sure whether that was your question, but it will be 10 foot back from where the asphalt ends.
I got you. What, why didn't you want to extend the road on down and then turn your driveway into your property like the rest of them?
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. I think you're going to wind up losing some, the trees. There's a beautiful burled oak right as you're coming in to my left or on the south side of the driveway. I mean, that would have to go. And that's one reason. The other reason, I mean, is honestly, you're just taking the existing problem and moving it 20 foot down the road. I mean, there's a problem there.
I was just curious why you
Yeah,
were starting your gate.
that was it. We just, Callie impressed upon me that we should really look at saving every tree. And I agree. I mean, we took out as few, if you see the lot, I mean, the only trees that are gone are the trees that had to go to build that house. I mean, we love the trees there. It's a beautiful piece of property.
So what you're asking tonight is for us to abandon the right-of-way where your driveway is going?
If that's the technical term, I would defer to council, because I'm not trying to abandon certainly the right-of-way in the sense, but if that's de facto what that means, then yes. But I would let Mr. Burns speak to that.
You'd have to, there's an application process for that. If they indicate that's the route they want to go and approve it tonight, you can get with David Campbell, and there's just a process you have to go through, but that would be one route you can go.
Right. That was, thank you. That was explained to me, but again, we're not trying to do that. I don't think, look, I don't understand all the intricacies of this, but we've never said, hey, Jay, you take half the property and I'll take the other half. Let's go to the city council. Let's fill out one of those. We never did any of that. I mean, I understand the spirit of what the right of way is there for, and we want to, we want to respect that.
Excuse, Mayor?
Yes.
I was wondering, just to give council full context, would you like to hear from Mr. David Campbell, because he's been working with Mr. Kruger?
Please, I think it'd be appropriate at this time.
Yeah, that was my question was, is that going to continue to be right away, and is the city liable for, that portion of his driveway, or just curious?
I can do whatever you want, I guess, in that. I mean, I would, it was explained to me that I'd probably be signing some kind of hold harmless. I think that's in the due diligence packet of Mr. Allen. He'd already signed one of those, so that's what I figured you'd ask me to sign, is a hold harmless. We haven't talked about this, but I plan on putting about 50 grand in there in terms of, fence and, in either concrete or pavers yet to be determined, and landscaping and, and a pedestrian only sign, et cetera.
Okay. Excuse me, let's yield to Mr. Campbell.
Pardon me.
And hear the city side at this point.
Yeah.
This is a unique situation that we have here in the city, where the improvements to the roadway don't extend to the property line. It's also utilized as a neighborhood park. A lot of pedestrians walk down to the water. As a matter of fact, as Mr. Kruger said, there's a lot of vehicles that park at the end of this pavement. So speaking with Lance Johnson, this has been an ongoing problem for some time, and Lance has had no parking signs. And can you move that photograph over for me? Yeah. So currently there's planters there now. And then when the original property owner came to speak with the city, he wanted to secure his property while it was under construction and into the future after construction. So to do that, we essentially moved the pot to the left and allowed them to put up a chain which would not allow vehicles back in the construction area and now to Mr. Kruger's property. We were trying to figure out, and we still are, how best to treat this long term. Typically, you don't allow, our code doesn't allow a gate in the middle of the right-of-way, but there's no other circumstance in the city quite like this. A gate to me would seem appropriate at the edge of pavement to keep vehicles from entering that right-of-way area and just mainly allow pedestrians to access. The problem comes in where Mr. Kruger has a desire to fence that area in the right-of-way, essentially fence the driveway. And I understand why. It's for the safety and security of that property. But in essence, what a fence would do would take public property and be used for private use. And that's what we're trying to figure out in this situation. It's not easy to try to come up with a good solution that worked with everybody. Keep the trees, keep the atmosphere of a park, keep the driveways accessible at all times by the property owners. So this is a continuing issue that Mr. Kruger and I continue to try to figure out. And I believe that's what brings him here this evening, is to, there's certain things in that code that I have no latitude, and that would be fencing inside the right-of-way. And again, I think a gate at the edge of pavement may be appropriate, but certainly a fence located within the public right-of-way is something that that I just can't make those decisions. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Councilmember Foreman?
Yeah, I'm done.
I agree with you. This goes back a long time. I remember when Mr. Odom tried to trade the property there for the area along where the cement plant is, that strip in there, exchange it, and we didn't agree to do that, so this just stayed in place. But I guess my question really is, do we know who supports maintaining this as a city property?
From edge of pavement to edge of water? The entire thing?
Yeah, but it goes back, like I say before, we got into the same situation before because it was being used for, let's say, unsavory type activities down there, and no one was interested in taking care of it. And so it seems like the proper thing to do, if we're not going to support it as a city park or to maintain it, or we don't have a demand for it, we ought to vacate it.
And that's one route, Mr. Foreman. The other route, are you just asking to put a gate up, Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd ask you to put up both, and here's why. And David and I have had numerous conversations, and I remember being in his office on July 6th with Callie Barker, and because he sent me an email, and he says, well, I understand why you want a gate, but I can't authorize a fence, but I know you need a fence. I mean, something, he's been stuck in the middle on this deal. And so, I mean, if you remember, my favorite comedy, Blazing Saddles, and you have a gate, but you don't have any fence around it, I mean, it kind of makes a gate kind of useless. So, yes, we do want to put a fence along that line there.
Well, have you considered going the Board of Adjustment route and seeking a variance in that area? Have you talked to anyone about that?
I have not. It was explained to me that, or if I heard correctly, that this was really the best way to do it, is to present my case to council. I also thought about going to, what is it, I want to say LPA, is that right, the land, and then someone explained to me, no, if you're not trying to vacate it, don't do that, then it's going to look like you're trying to take the property. So I've been learning as I've been going in this process. So, but again, David has been supportive. I think, Mr. Campbell sees the need, to have the fence there. To your point, Councilman Foreman, I mean, we find needles, we find Sudafed, we find used prophylactic. I mean, you see all kinds of things down there. It is at best a lover's lane, and at worst something else. And I mean, that's why I have to secure the property.
And to both of y'all's point, and I'm sure it is some sort of a lover's lane, but I do know families access it during the day. It's not all unsavory activities, and I think if we vacated the entire right-of-way, I think there would be a lot of pushback, one from my sister-in-law who frequents it regularly with my niece and nephew. But are we talking about in this plan right here, Doug? If you could go to that. We're talking about where the yellow is in the middle of the right-of-way.
Yes, the yellow is the border of the driveway.
Okay.
And then where the green starts is the fence line.
Where the green starts.
Yeah, see all the green area, looks like a big putting green?
Yeah.
So the fence is, we've proposed to be, well, in some places 1 foot, in some places I think it's as much as 3 foot off of the driveway, where I plan on planting azaleas or whatever Callie tells me to
So
plant in there.
is that a partial vacation of the right-of-way? Is that what that image shows? So the white, so the right-of-way is that rectangle, but the white where the yellow ribbon goes and the rectangle is the driveway.
Normally, when we vacate a right-of-way, it's split down the center, and one half goes to the property on that side and half goes on to the other side. This would not be a true vacation of the right-of-way.
Okay, even though,
You can do it. You'd have to get a meets and bounds description to figure out that little like curve and all that, and you might want to put the cost of that on the applicant at that point. If they want to get a partial right away, then they hire the surveyor to draw it up.
as long as we're leaving this waterfront access open to the public on the right-of-way, which it looks like this plan shows.
Right.
Then I have no real objections to you securing your property. And like Mr. Campbell said, it is a unique situation. There's not another right-of-way and parcel of property like this in town.
Just to respond, I'm remembering years ago in the situation being there then, and the dock is not really a dock. The city part of this, we're not, I don't believe, maintaining it as a location to launch boats or anything else. And so what I'm looking at, it's a liability to the city. It's definitely a liability to the city if something happens there, and we have to get involved in it. So I'm just saying, if we don't have a use for it under the law, I think you're supposed to give it back to the owners.
Sure, but my argument is there are people using it, and not all are for nefarious activities, and I support those uses. But I also support this plan that he's presented us tonight, which is not a complete vacation of the right-of-way. It's, I guess you would call it a partial.
Yep.
It's a unique parcel, and I do support Mr. Kruger securing his property. But I don't think I would support a complete vacation of the right-of-way.
Let's get back in order and move to Councilwoman Ramswell.
Real quick, Councilwoman Ramswell, tonight y'all would not be able to actually vote on allowing that. He would still have to, you're kind of giving him some indication tonight. There's still a process for applying, and then he would come back, it would then come back before you once he's gone through the application process. If that's the route y'all indicate y'all want him to go through tonight.
Councilwoman Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're not seeking to take over or ask the city to abandon the right-of-way, correct?
Well, that's correct, but I mean, if the city's presenting that as a feasible
Why not?
alternative, then I'm all ears. But
Okay.
I mean, again, I understand the spirit of what it's turned into. I don't think it was ever intended for that reason, but I understand what it's become.
Right.
I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy that I can't walk my dog anymore because of that bald. I don't want to be that guy. I'm a good neighbor. Most of y'all know me. I've lived here 20-some-odd years. I've raised my kids here. I just kind of want to get along, but I want to protect my family. So I never envisioned it, and I'm not a lawyer, so I never envisioned this becoming a vacation of property, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. And again, if you want to entertain taking the whole thing, then tell me more. But
Right.
I'd be happy just to get access to my property and secure it.
So what I see when I look at this plan, it's very evident that you're asking, actually, you probably already utilized part of it anyway for your driveway, correct?
You bet.
So the green, the light green, is what would be kept for public access and use.
That is
so the
correct.
public would retain their ingress, egress, whatever the proper terminology is. I also think I heard someone say there's no parking there, so it's not car traffic that would be going through. So the fact that I'm seeing a path, a footpath that allows the foot traffic that it's intended for, to me, could this be, how do we help Mr. Kruger tonight? Because he's even talking about beautifying that area and making it more attractive. Is this something we could avoid all the subsequent votes and having to vacate if he doesn't really want to vacate, if we look at it as like a public-private partnership? Or, I mean, he's already, all he essentially wants to do is add a fence and secure his property to a driveway he's already been utilizing, and the use remains the same for the access.
Because it is a public right-of-way, you were discussing a partial vacation. I think that might be the way for Mr. Kruger to go, to come in and do an application for a partial vacation. But if it's public property, we can't allow private use. There's just no...
But he has been using it, right? Because that's his driveway. That's
no, he's just building this house.
Well, right, but to access that property, that's how people have accessed that land, correct?
Okay. So right now, it's a right-of-way. The green part and then the line that runs parallel to that, that's the right-of-way. What he's proposing is putting a fence through part of the right-of-way. If he can get a partial vacation, that would be the perfect solution to be able to do that. We can't allow him to build the fence if it remains public property. So an interlocal agreement wouldn't work on that. If it's either public property, which it means it's not fenced, or it's private property, which he could possibly get through an application for partial vacation.
Does that come back to us, or does that go to LPA and then us
Yes.
and all that
Yes, it
process? Okay. I'm happy to make the motion. I don't think we even need a motion, though, because it would just be Mr. Kruger reapplying.
I don't
that
believe we
correct?
can vote on this evening. We'll just have to ask staff to continue to look into it. Councilmember Dixon?
Would an easement be any easier? Because I will never be able to take a vacation of this. Would an easement be any easier looking at this?
No, the right-of-way is actually a public easement, and Mr. Kruger technically actually owns about half that property, and whoever, is it Mr. Odom on the other side?
Correct.
He would own the other half that property. The right-of-way is actually an easement for the public, essentially.
I understand, but in trying to get what he wants here, to grant him an easement to be able to put this up, might be easier than a vacation. Well, it would be easier than a vacation.
Actually, really the only other alternative to put the fence up would be to seek a variance, which would be a much more complicated process. You'd have to call the Board of Adjustment, and they would vote to allow a variance in this particular zoning, or this classification, to allow a fence to be built over that. That would actually take longer and probably be more expensive for Mr. Kruger.
If I still have the floor, Mayor, my worry is that I can tell you, I don't feel like a vacation is, I remember the arguments whenever this came up. I wasn't on city council at that time, but I do remember the arguments, and I agree with the arguments that this is a neighborhood, maybe not classified as a park, it's a whatever, but people, good people do go down there. It's not all bad people, and we want to make sure that we have an asset there. We want to keep it, and certainly giving up that, to me, already built and whatever may be developed, kind of a recreation area, park, or whatever it is for us to give it away. I just couldn't agree with that on that particular piece of property, because I do know the backstory of it, and the backstory of it was when they tried to do it before, there was a lot of people that came up in arms about it. And so I hate to send you on a goose hunt to go and try to get some sort of a vacation on this, because truly, I can't speak for the council, but I just don't see it working out. But if we could come up with some other language or some other verbiage or whatever it may be to make it happen, I'm certainly willing to look at it, making it happen.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I mean, we certainly wasn't trying to infer that everyone comes down there as of, a nefarious intent. But, yeah, I mean, my boy loves to fish, and, we're blessed. We've got a piece of property on the water, and there's a lot of young men that don't. And so, we don't want to stop anybody from going down there to use it. But I keep going back to, my due diligence package. I mean, I've got a drawing of what I believe to be this exact same thing that was presented to me by Mr. Howard and his agent, Mr. Forrester, was signed off by Greg Casella. And so I was kind of surprised that I even had to go to begin with to try to do all this. I mean, I thought that's what I was buying to begin with. So either I'm not a very good reader or something has changed. And I guess maybe I'd have to see counsel to understand what has changed in that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Let Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. So if we do a hold harmless agreement, we can't put a fence there?
Could you please respond to that, Ms. Kopp?
Not if, we can't put a fence if it remains public property. You can't block the right-of-way.
So we can't do a hold harmless on the driveway, but he'd have to move his gate down to the property line.
Why did this even come to us tonight?
Mayor, I think I still have the floor.
Okay. Please.
Is that correct? He can have his driveway there, but the fence or the gate would have to be on the property line?
Correct.
And, all right, so help me understand, and I'm not saying that this is my last offer, for lack of a better word, but I can put a gate up there. I've been told all along I can put a gate up there. I've got a gate there right now, correct?
That gate was permitted because of the unique circumstance. If the gate weren't there during construction, vehicles could access literally all the way down to the water.
Right.
So that was a decision for your safety.
Right. No, and so I mean,
and for the park. Yeah, or excuse me, and for the right-of-way.
Sorry.
You're saying that was designed as a temporary fix?
The original permit was, I believe, showed a gate, and rather than a fence along that driveway, there were bollards. So it was essentially wide open as it is now, but it was an attempt to protect that property from vehicles using that driveway and blocking access to that house, as well as protecting the right-of-way from vehicles driving all the way down to the water.
So it's almost like a protective measure for something that's already been established as a customary use. I mean, I'm not an attorney, and I may be using that term out of line, but is that safe to say? I mean, if there's a gate there already for whatever purpose, and that driveway has been utilized over time to access that parcel, what's different other than now he's going to be beautifying the property?
You actually can't get an easement if you can't get an easement if it's an allowable use, and if the city's allowing him to put the gate there in the first place, then he can't get an easement. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but to establish an easement like that, it actually has to be somewhat adverse, and you would have to put it up there and kind of tell the city, come, what are you going to do about my gate? But we've been allowing the gate to be there.
Could I suggest that possibly the city continue to negotiate on this and come up with reasonable alternatives that he might apply for, and then let him make that choice and then bring it back to council in a more traditional fashion?
Mayor, I have one more question. The only way to do what you want to do is to vacate that right-of-way. And if we vacate the right-of-way, half has got to go to this man and the other half, to the property owners, and the other half goes to the other property owners, then you don't have enough room to put your driveway unless you work that out with your neighbor. Am I correct with that?
Well, yeah, you are correct. Now, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. And what that would force me to do then is to cut down I don't know, an 80-year-old oak tree there to do it.
Right, but it sounds like tonight that's what we're getting at is.
Well, actually, Councilman Braden, that's the standard situation. If the city was to abandon a right-of-way, it would go 50-50 to each side. But in this situation, if he applied for a right-of-way vacation, he does have to notify his neighbors, and the chief neighbor would be Mr. Odom. And if Mr. Odom signed off on this, that would not be an issue. It could be carved out. We could vary from the standard statutory procedure that goes 50-50 to each property owner. So, no, it could be done through that. If you apply for a right-of-way vacation and go through the proper steps, it could be done.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I need to do whatever you decide for me to do. I mean, that's kind of the way it is. I would say just, gosh, guys, I've been doing this dance for well over a year now with staff, and again, they've been great, but, this is, we thought we came here because, in July, I had a verbal we could do it, and then shortly after, I had it said, no, it's got to be in writing, so, you go through all of this to come here to seek a solution for something, so it's just a little disappointing.
Mr. Braden, are you yielding the floor?
I was just trying to shorten the, ease the pain to find out, if we can't, that sounds like that's the option. If I don't guess we can vacate a portion of the right of way and keep it like it looks now, so the public still has. We have a portion and he has a portion. Is that not an option?
That is an option, yes. And I think you can make it look like that picture right there. That'd be access for the public on the green part right there. You're going to put a fence along that, right, along your driveway? Is that what you're proposing?
Correct. And again, where the green meets the white is the proposed fence line on the north side, and on the south side, well, it's kind of underneath the canopy of the tree cover, but it jaunts back. It doesn't go straight across. Mr. Tanaka wanted it to go back to keep his front of his property clear and unencumbered.
Honestly, if you're going to resell this property in years, I'm not trying to give you legal advice, but the application process would be the best process to go through because for title purposes later on.
Yeah, well, I don't plan on it, but frankly, I want to live there.
That would be my choice or what I could support. That's what I could support, was vacating a portion of the right of way so you get what you want and the public still gets access to the park.
Yep. Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Number one, do we have any security lighting out there at all?
Mr. Odom put up security lighting out there.
On the private property.
But as far as I know, the city doesn't have any lighting there.
Okay, well, I'd like to look at the short term of exploring that possibility of getting some sort of lighting out there on the city's right-of-way. Secondly, so I'll leave that to the staff to figure that out. Secondly, we call it a right-of-way, and technically it is a right-of-way, but it's supposed to originally be the street all the way to the end, right? Is that?
The purpose of that right-of-way was to build a road.
Okay, so and then I heard Mr. Kruger say that Mr. Johnson said it's not technically a park.
That's correct.
Okay, because I'm not going to name names of things, but a long while back we had a situation, long before I was on council, where a person's property was blocked by another person's property. They built a parking lot and did not give that person access to their property. There was a court battle, and they had to end up giving access to that property. Since it's supposed to be a road, it's not supposed to be a park. It's technically a road. It's kind of sort of similar to 6th Street, where 4th and 6th Street are off of Beach Drive. But and we did something similar across from Beach Drive, where Beach Drive ends up being a pocket park, where whatever the name of the condo is there across the street from Beach Drive in 98. So I mean, that was because that was nothing. There was no road or anything there until that condo built there. Then we built the road in a little tiny pocket park. So that's the other option I'm looking at, is that if it's not a park, it's not a park. It's technically a road that needs to be improved so that Mr. Kruger can utilize his property if it means moving the driveway a little bit. That's the other option that I could see. Since I mean, unless we're going to turn around and say it is a park, but I'm being told it's not really a park. So, but in the process, or in the meantime, while we sort this out, I think if we could get some more adequate lighting for security purposes out there, that'll stop some of the illicit activity out there. That's all.
Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we got to get this meeting back on track. At the end of the day, I don't typically support vacations, but I do, as an attorney, I see the legal conundrum and gray area that this unique circumstance presents. And that is the reason that I would typically support a partial vacation. I think that's probably the route that I see probably that we're going to be able to go down. I'd like to see you and Mr. Odom and our attorneys and staff get in a room together and come back at some future point to get us a proposal that, depending upon how anybody feels on this dais, can go yay or nay, because we're going to continue for another hour debating upon the virtues and the potential outcomes. We got to keep this thing going. But if we don't need this in a motion, and staff and everybody else understands, let's find a solution, because I don't have a whole lot of heartburn with a partial vacation in this very, very strange and obscure sort of situation that would still ensure a very narrow passageway that would continue down to this little dock area.
All right. Councilmember Ramsell.
Nothing, that's an old one.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, no further discussion. I don't believe we have any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council members and mayor, staff.
Mayor. Staff is comfortable with the way we're leaving this? Okay. We'll move to the public comment section. We have three that wish to speak on the city manager's, excuse me, 4D item. I'm going to hold those till then. I have one other card. Christina Weeks, would you like to come to the podium? I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to come up. This is during the public hearing, and everyone has a right to speak at that point, and you'll be able to speak then. Having no other public comment cards, as I reported to council at the last meeting, a citizens group from Destin began a movement. I believe some of them have some rather deep draft sailboats that were hitting bottom trying to go out the pass. Others were concerned about serious beach erosion. And it started a movement making presentations to the TDC to see if we could get the white sand funding to improve those two situations. I'm meaning to give a quick recap here, if I can find my notes. As all of you are aware, we have a dredge that will be operating to bring in sand for the Norego Point Renourishment Project. We cannot tie on to that contract, but we can create a new contract, and I believe if I can steal Kelly Wines, this is kind of a triple hit. We can get a dredge for a very inexpensive price because we don't have to pay the $1 million or more to have a dredge located in the pass to dredge it. We can improve the maneuverability throughout the pass, deepen it, take the sand and move it to where it's most needed. And this project began and was dropped in the lap of the TDC. This morning, they voted to present this project to the Okaloosa County Commission, which will be the final approval process. They made the recommendation. As the process unfolded, it turns out that the city of Destin holds the permits for the dredging of the end of the pass. This is out to the ocean buoy through East Pass up to where the dredge would discontinue its work for Noriego Point. With the city's cooperation, it would allow the dredging to continue and this process to begin. The basic outline of the project is the TDC has graciously volunteered to fund the project utilizing the city's permits. And with that overall explanation, I want to turn it over to Ms. Lejeune to give you the technicalities that the city is going to have to provide to make this thing work.
Yes, sir, thank you. So as the mayor had stated, that utilizing the city of Destin's existing dredge permit, entering into an interlocal agreement with Okaloosa County, the Tourist Development Council they discussed this morning and voted to send a recommendation to the county commission that funding could be used to reimburse the city for the cost of engineering the project management. We would have to do the project management because the permit belongs to us. We would have to we'd have to contract with the dredge company. We would have to contract with the engineering management company. And then the work could begin immediately after Noriega Point stabilization project is complete. What we are asking the council to consider is to give the city attorney and myself direction to continue working with Okaloosa County to move the project forward. We would be asking for a special meeting to bring back the contract for the dredge company, the contract for the project engineering, and the interlocal agreement with the county. The dredge company, we can utilize a single source procurement process because they're here. And the engineering company would be sole source, Taylor Engineering, because they are the company that is the most knowledgeable and experienced with this. They've also been doing the monitoring for the inlet management plan, which is the science being used to show that the restoration sand needs to go to the east side of the east jetty. So if you have any additional questions, we have Matt Taylor is here. Mr. David Campbell is familiar with the project. Mr. Kelly Wines and Mr. Greg Stewart, the county attorney, is here. Mr. Bruce Kroll from the TDC, and the city attorney has been working just having some conversations with Mr. Greg Stewart to make sure that we could get all of our ducks in a row quickly if the council would like us to proceed with this process.
Real quick, and I thank Mr. Stewart because he did provide a list of items I provided each one of y'all. And I'll have an extra copy for you, Ray, too, for the agenda packet later on for the minutes. But the only thing that might be a little bit time constraining, and the Holiday Isle Owners Association actually approached me before the meeting and indicated that they've already reached out to all the condos. There's also some other easements we'll have to get from all the property owners who are all going to take the sand, and I believe a number of those are condos. And typically, condo associations have to call board meetings to vote on something like this. But from what I've heard from the Holiday Isle Owners Association, is they've already reached out to all of them. They're already ready to use their own emergency powers and to get this done quickly. Still, that might be the only thing that if we do have a special meeting next Monday, that might be the only thing remaining, is a few of those easements. But we could probably get all this done by next Monday if y'all decide to move forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Braden.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I support it 110%. Anything we can do to help with any portion of all the project, anything we can do to expedite it, I mean, I'm behind it 110%.
How about making the motion?
I'll make that motion.
Yes.
Next Monday, the 12th, is Lincoln's birthday. Is that a holiday?
No.
No, we're open for business next Monday.
Okay.
Ready, Mayor?
Yes,
I
please.
move to direct the city attorney and the city manager to work with Okaloosa County to move the project forward and bring back the necessary contracts and agreements for the city council to approve.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Councilmember Dixon?
I was going to make the motion, but at this time, thank you, Commissioner Wines, thank you, Bruce Crowd, thank you, Mayor, thank you, everybody that worked on this. Something desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further discussion. I'll call, yes, I got a second. I'll call for the vote. We have a unanimous yes. And
Mayor, can y'all also vote to hold a special meeting next Monday too? I figured we'd do that by separate motion from this. So.
Okay.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Crawl can run it 6 minutes, right?
I knew after that meeting this morning I was going to be replaced. I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Unanimous yes. Ms. Lejeune, would you like to carry on the city manager's report?
Yes, sir. This is a capital improvement project to the construction of a new 8-foot wide ADA compliant multi-use pathway with lighting along Indian Bayou Trail. Mr. David Campbell is the project manager for this project, so I'm going to turn it over to him at this point in time.
This is a project that was in the FY17 budget to be completed. It's a pathway on Indian Bayou Trail that goes from US Highway 98 along Indian Bayou Trail on the west side down to where the church is. We got a price from our continuing service provider for concrete of $99,741. A quote from, an estimate from Gulf Power of $148,800, and that's for the installation of the conduit, the conductors, the lighting, and that we pay for that up front, and then we have a $300, let me see that number, a $314 a month electric bill that goes along with that as well. We are also asking for a 15% contingency for this project of $37,000. Which would bring the entire project in at $285,541. There's currently $489,000 in the Pathways Master Plan account. And I would ask your approval tonight for this project. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I'm not seeing any discussion at the moment. Could I have a motion?
I move that the city council approve an expenditure not to exceed $285,541.84 for the construction of a new 8-foot wide ADA compliant multi-use pathway with lighting along Indian Bayou Trail, and authorize the city manager to approve a work order in the amount of $99,741.84 for the city's continuing concrete services provider, S.H. Hayes Enterprises, LLC, and enter into an agreement with Gulf Power to install and maintain the lighting for an approximate amount of $148,800 and $314.39 plus taxes a month for maintenance and energy.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
I have a motion. I have a second. Councilwoman Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions. I'm all for hiking, biking, walking, multimodal trails, whatever we call them, but this seems to be sort of the trail that leads to nowhere. I mean, am I right? Where it looks like it comes out, goes around past here, and then just sort of ends at the end of the street. Is that correct?
It'll tie to an existing sidewalk that goes into Indian Bayou.
Okay, so the goal then is to connect into Indian Bayou neighborhood.
That's correct, and connect up to US Highway 98. Currently, we're working with DOT to make that connection. It didn't show up in their plans for the road widening, but they've agreed to work with us to make sure that we get connected to Highway 98.
Okay, now I drive this literally daily. You'd think I'd know this. I'm trying to picture, do we already have sidewalks that are here right outside? We don't, do we? It ends right at the annex, is that correct?
It ends past the annex. There's a retaining wall that near the Gulf Power easement towards Highway 98, and that's where the sidewalk currently ends.
Okay,
and
thank you.
We're looking to bring it to 98 with this.
Okay, gotcha.
Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's $314 a month for 25 streetlights? Is that correct?
That is the price that Gulf Power gave us. It's not only for the energy, it's for the maintenance of those lights. So they're essentially going to be their lights.
Whew. And how are we going to pay for that without raising taxes? Anybody know?
Their rates are going down this year, Rodney.
Right. That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Dixon.
You know, I can't really tell by this drawing, but hopefully we're going to make some sort of improvements to that roundabout. 2 or 3 times over the summer, I see where people are trying to get across that, especially with women with children in carriages and stuff like that, trying to get across that that traffic circle, and there is no good place to actually cross that, especially from right here across the road around. So I hope we're going to do something about trying to make that a little better.
We'll certainly look at that. Based on the latest safety designs for roundabouts, they're currently showing them further away from the circle, which gives pedestrians and vehicles a chance to get out of the circle before they stop for pedestrians. Currently, right now, you're right, it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, I understand they're not supposed to go across there, but they do, and
right.
The reason they do is there's no sidewalks across the road here. So I don't know if we can do anything about that, but we do need to work on that.
We'll look at that.
Thanks.
Councilmember Marler.
Going toward Highway 98, that from that red line to 98, that the state will be doing that as part of the improvements.
We're currently talking to DOT about making that happen, because that is the limits of their construction, where that red line ends.
Okay, so, but we would tie, if we get what we want there, that we tie into theirs.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all.
Councilmember Morgan.
Does the county have any plans to improve pedestrian sidewalks behind Walmart, like extending down Commons?
They currently have no plans to do that.
Sure.
It gets fairly narrow by Indian Lakes.
Yeah.
But I would, we brought it up to the county public works director, and so they're aware.
Sure.
It would be nice to have that pedestrian connection. A portion of that roadway has a sidewalk.
And it ends right by the Palms and.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, especially with the new apartments,
That's
there's
right.
a lot of pedestrian activity there, and none of it's on a sidewalk, because there's none.
And we work with the county on Commons Drive. We have an interlocal agreement regarding Commons Drive.
Yeah.
So we have done some things in the past together on that.
Sure.
And we'll bring it up again.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing no further discussion, if pleases council, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. 6 yes, 1 no. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. This is a request for purchase of a truck that is not currently budgeted. We had 2 trucks recently go down. We need to purchase one as a full replacement. I will turn this over to Mr. David Campbell.
As Ms. Lejeune said, in November, we had in public services, one of our vehicles go down. The spark plug broke off and in the piston. We got a quote to fix it. It was somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000. The value of the truck was less than the cost to replace. While we were looking into this, we had another vehicle go down, and that had transmission issues. So what we were able to do was take the transmission out of one of the vehicles and put it in the other, so now we have one operating vehicle. That still leaves us one vehicle shy. So this, all this occurred after budget. So we're asking City Council to approve the purchase of another truck for public services and to be funded out of the ending fund balance, ending year fund balance.
Councilmember Braden?
Do you recall how much money we made with all the equipment and vehicles we sold last year?
I don't have that figure, but I can find that out for you.
Do we know where that money went?
And Bragg maybe can answer that, but I believe it goes back into the general fund.
And I'm not guessing it was anywhere close to this 27,000. You think it was 27 exactly? Yeah.
I'll have to find out.
I was just curious, just rough. I had no idea if we had $1,000 or there was $100,000 worth of stuff we sold. I didn't know if anybody just had a rough idea was all.
I don't recall, no. But I can find that out for you.
No, you don't have to. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Morgan.
I move that council authorize the city manager to purchase a 2018 Ford F-150 under the Florida State Purchasing Contract in the amount of $27,730. Fund the purchase with the city's ending fund balance and make the appropriate budget amendment.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
I have a motion. I have a second. Councilmember Dixon?
I was going to make the motion, Mayor.
Okay. I see no further discussion. Please, as council, I will call for the vote. Unanimous yes. Ms. Lejeune, on your next item, we have 3 members of the audience that would like to speak. Would you like them to go first, or would you like to present the item?
I would like to go ahead and present the item, sir.
Okay. We're going to do that, but allow us a 5-minute break, and then we'll start with that.
Okay.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll return to your chairs, we'll come back to order.
Living in a van down by the river. At Foley.
Where's your buddy?
Where the hell he went? Oh, he's getting a drink.
There he is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll return to your seats, we're ready to start. I call the meeting back to order. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So this is regarding the Airport Road median design, and I'm just going to give you a very brief history. In the 2017, the Airport Road median landscaping was on the Town Center CRA Advisory Committee work plan, and they had gotten just a little bit off track, not of their own fault, but FDOT had done a safety audit, and then they had identified areas of construction that they were going to be doing in the future, near future for that area. So they decided to move their focus over to the west end of that particular road. Then in the summer of 2017, we went out and hired a landscape architect to go ahead and do the design, with the understanding that we were going to shift that work plan over to staff in 2018, because during that time, we lost members of the advisory committee, so we don't have a quorum right now. So a 218 fiscal year work plan is for staff to go ahead and move this project forward. So we recently received the preliminary design from the landscape architect. As you can see in the agenda item, the design of the plans, and then securing the CRA board approvals, and then securing permit approvals was scheduled for the fall of 2018, which is currently in process and on track. Once the preliminary design went out, it was the intention to get some comments from the 3 remaining advisory committee members. Knowing that we couldn't have a quorum, we were not going to have a recommendation, but we were going to then share those comments with the CRA board. Councilmember Morgan had asked me to go ahead and put this on the agenda so that rather than the CRA, the City Council could look at it at this part of the process. Whatever comments or recommendations that the council would like to make at this time, we'll then take those and then continue on the process, which is to have City Engineering and Traffic Division sit down with the landscape architect and take into consideration technical accuracy and sufficiency with the FDOT Green Book standards, which by our Land Development Code we are required to follow. So that's in a nutshell where we are right now, and I would like to go ahead and turn this over to Councilman Morgan because he had asked that this be placed on tonight's agenda.
Thank you very much. I am not too familiar with the Green Book standards, and so I'm sure the landscape architect who put this together is. My concern here with the plan, I'm happy to see we're beautifying Airport Road. But my concern is Destin is full of crepe myrtles and palm trees. We have enough of those. And I would like to see oak trees, hardwoods. I know there's some concerns there in terms of the median sizes, but I can remember, I know a lot of y'all share my feelings about palm trees and crepe myrtles, and I know the public does too, especially in Old Destin where this road is. So I had Mr. Ron Sandstead, who is a wonderful advocate of Main Street and Airport Road, and he had a brief presentation he put together. So, Ron, if you could.
Thank you for the opportunity to come before you and speak. My name is Ron Sandstead, and my wife and I own Flutterby Antiques on Main Street. And recently, Michelle's on the CRA committee, so I was able to see that plan that you were talking about coming through. I was surprised. I was really gratified to see that we do have a plan, that the city is moving forward with landscaping ideas on Airport Road. But frankly, I was disappointed by the types of trees that were chosen. My purpose tonight is to call your attention to this plan before it is adopted and implemented. It's my understanding that Trees on the Coast is wanting to plant trees to honor the servicemen who were killed when the Black Hawk helicopters crashed last year. This is a great idea, but I want to be sure that the right kind of trees get planted. For those of you who haven't seen it, the proposed plan calls for 17 cabbage palms, 36 Sylvester palms, and 53 crepe myrtles. So you don't misunderstand me. I don't dislike these types of trees. I just think there are more and better options. Airport Road is not like any other street here in Destin. Because of the 11 to 15 foot wide medians, it's a great opportunity to showcase native Florida trees, particularly oaks and certain varieties of magnolias. Out of curiosity, I drove around Destin to see how oaks and magnolias have fit into this street landscapes. This is what I found and photographed. Okay, this is Main Street. There are 6 oaks just adjacent to the post office. They're planted 24 feet apart and are 8 feet from the curb. The median is 17 feet wide in this area. Later on down, as you go north, excuse me, north on the street, the medians are actually 5 feet. You know, don't go yet. Their medians are only 5 feet wide, and that's why we planted palm trees in there, because it was so narrow. On Mountain Drive, which is the next picture, the oaks and magnolias are planted from 2 to 4 feet from the curb and are irregularly spaced. The landscaping this street seems to be disorganized and much too close to the pavement. So this is not what we're looking for. On Stallman, which is the next, yes, that's Stallman. On Stallman Avenue, across from the Fishing Museum, the oaks are planted 12 inches from the asphalt and are about 16 inches in diameter. Obviously, 12 inches is too close to the street. But what was interesting is the damage to the asphalt is minimal, and the trees don't seem to pose any threat to the traffic or to vehicles. On 98 Palms, which is the next one, there's 98 Palms. This is right there across from Eglin Credit Union and the other bank. 98 Palms, the trees are planted 45 feet apart and are about 5 feet from the curb. The trees are about 12 inches in diameter. As you can see, the trees are impressive. At 5 feet from the curb, they don't pose any problems to the asphalt or traffic. On Commons Drive, adjacent to Homes Depot, yes, that's Commons Drive, the median is 12 foot wide. The trees are about 14-inch diameter, and trees are planted about 40 feet apart. Again, at 5 feet from the curbs, the trees are not a problem for the road or the traffic. For your information, the Trees Committee specifies that oak trees should be planted 40 feet apart and at least 5 feet from either curb. Finally, the last picture is, okay, that's on Commons Drive also, and that shows the root structure of these oak trees. And you can see that they're a long way from the edge of the curb. They pretty much go straight down. There are some feeder roots that go out to the side, but they don't distort the pavement. Okay, so now the next picture. Okay, this is, there are 2 oak trees actually on Airport Road right now, and they're across from the Porsche dealership. They look a little lonely, but they're a nice start. Okay, as you can see from the pictures, the nicest looking landscape streets were along 98 Palms and the medians on Commons Drive. Usually, visually, they are clean, open, and inviting. Commons actually look like a boulevard now that the trees have gotten a little more mature and they're spreading their canopy out, which would be cool for Airport Road. As for the cost difference between oaks and palms, it would probably be about the same cost. Planting 8-inch diameter oaks 35 to 40 foot apart would cost about the same as planting palms planted as per the proposed plan. In conclusion, I think we have an opportunity to make an otherwise unattractive streetscape into something unique and beautiful. The main thing to decide tonight is whether you want to see oaks on Airport Road or palm trees. Thank you for your time and your continuing dedication. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions?
I have questions, and it's because I don't have expertise in trees and planting and such. I live in Indian Bayou, and I know that the city just had to come around and replace great sections of the sidewalk because tree roots had busted up. And the one photo that you showed, first of all, I agree. I love the look of the oaks and how it can create a beautiful canopy. My concern and what I'm getting at is in even one of the photos that you showed, it looked like the roots were all popping up out of the ground. Don't they at some point jut out and start branching out and wouldn't? I guess what I'm concerned about is the fact that they would eventually, as they grew, create a problem. We'd be repairing sidewalks and
If you
such.
get too close, I agree. I absolutely agree. The Stallman, I thought was interesting because that asphalt was poured almost right up to the edge of the tree. They were only a foot apart from the tree to the asphalt, and there wasn't any distortion, just very little in a couple of areas where you could see cracks in the asphalt. I was surprised. I think it depends on the variety of oak tree that the landscape architect chooses. There are some oak trees that are going to create a mound and go out horizontally, and there are other oak trees that are going to go vertically with their root system. And I think the trees that we have locally, the water oaks that typically get planted, and the white oak, which is a tall statuesque tree, actually grows to 80 feet. I mean, those roots go down. So,
what size are they? That you may not know. When you purchase an oak tree to plant in a median like that, obviously you're not getting a little baby. You get one with some type of growth. Is the firming them up or bracing them any different than what we had to do on Airport with the palm trees?
Well, what I'm thinking for size, I'm thinking they're going to be looking at from 6 to 8 inch trees. That's the diameter. That's this wide. So it's like this. And the trees that they planted on Main Street in that little pocket park, I called Myra Williams, and she got me the cost on that, and it cost around $4,000 a tree. And those were some really massive 16-inch diameter trees. So an 8-inch tree is not going to cost anything near that. So I'm thinking maybe a couple $1,000s for an oak tree.
Great. Thank you for a really well thought out and documented presentation. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Dixon?
No, I'm good, Mayor.
Councilmember Braden?
And thank you, Mayor. I agree. I'd rather see oak trees, planted down through here myself, even if we had to do it in stages to get it done. I can take a picture. I saw it this weekend in Brundage, Alabama. I've been passing that same oak tree for 15 years, and it's the concrete curb. The tree has actually grown into the curb, and I can't even wrap my arm around that oak tree. And I guess they keep just shaving the side off, but there's no damage at all to the road whatsoever. And it may just be the particular oak tree like you were talking about. But I'd much rather see those oak trees planted, because it does make a beautiful canopy like on Commons Drive. That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yeah, I would honestly, if we're just going to put more crepe myrtles, I would probably rather not even see them. You can't just, like Harbor Boulevard, when we renamed it from Highway 98, you can't just rename it a boulevard and all of a sudden you got a boulevard. You got to do a little work to it. And in terms financially, Councilmember Ramswell, we've got a wonderful organization, Trees on the Coast, and lots of community partners that would be willing to, if not foot all of the bill, a significant portion of it. And it would be a great incentive for us to raise money. And I'm sure Alan French has a few things to say on the matter. He filled out a blue card, Mayor. So if you want to get to the rest of the speakers on this item, I'd love to hear what he has to say.
Mr. French?
Hello, my name is Dr. Alan French. I live at 50 Lands End Drive. I'm not sure about footing the whole bill, Chatham. Woo! Unless we can get a lot more donors. And Ron Sandsted, you're the man. I appreciate your presentation, and I think that's just awesome. But thank you for letting me speak tonight. And I come to speak about this tree planting project on Airport Road. First, just a little bit about us. As you may or may not know, Trees on the Coast is a nonprofit organization dedicated to enhancing the beauty of Okaloosa and Walton counties one tree at a time. Since our founding in 2015, we have been responsible for the donation and planting of over 200 trees, mostly in Destin. Through generous tax-deductible donations, we have saved the city and the taxpayers over $100,000 while enhancing the beauty of Destin. We want to be a force for positive change, and we want to be your partner, the city's partner. I don't know the ins and outs of all the details of how the city works. I mean, I think I just heard something about the fall, so what I'm going to say may not be even pertinent to what is actually going to happen through the processes of the city. And what I'm also going to say is how I felt last week. So some of the things I'm going to talk about may have been resolved by now, but I'm going to go ahead and say how I was feeling last week. Our board of Trees on the Coast was so excited that the city paid for a landscape plan for Airport Road. That's what we're looking for, and that's awesome. We created a project at our last board meeting to plant 11 trees per the plan that we had received at that time to honor the 11 servicemen who perished 2 years ago in a Black Hawk helicopter crash. Our plan is to have a ceremony on March the 10th. I'm telling you our plan. I don't know what reality is, but this is our plan, which is the 2-year anniversary of this tragic accident. We want to bring the community together, our city leaders, the Destin Rotary Club, the American Legion, businesses on Airport Road, the Destin Chamber of Commerce, the Bagpipe Corps, and most importantly, our citizens. We want to give these trees to the city. I'm going to repeat that. We want to give the trees to the city. When we asked to do this project, we received a list of requirements, quote-unquote requirements. We were asked to submit a site plan, location and distance from curbing, regulatory signage, view cones, meet all FDOT requirements, location of subsurface drainage system, location of piping / stormwater exfiltration systems, requirement of root guards, and on, et cetera, et cetera. I loosely translate this to mean we don't want your trees because, and I may have misunderstood, but that's how we feel. You know, we're trying to do something and then we're told, well, give us all these, meet all these requirements. So here's all we're asking. We are a small organization and we do not have the time, expertise, or funding to meet all of these requirements. We respect our city engineers and the fact that they want the trees properly placed. And we wholeheartedly agree that this should be done. I mean, that's part of our mission is to properly place trees. That's what we just talked about a minute ago. All we're asking is that the city create a plan that meets all the aforementioned requirements. Decide the species of the trees. Hopefully, we want live oaks also. Decide the location of the trees and let us know. We will then gladly donate and plant the trees, save the taxpayers money, create a sense of civic pride, help the environment, increase property values, and enhance the beauty of our city. We desperately want the city to be our partners and not adversaries or blockers of tree planting projects. If we pull in the same direction, great things will happen. Please let us know that trees on the coast, when and where you want the trees. In the meantime, we're going to continue with our other projects in different jurisdictions. I would hope, though, that Destin will allow us to proceed next month with this worthy dedication and honor tree planting project for our fallen servicemen. So at this point, I don't know where we are. I don't know if that's a pipe dream to even think about doing that next month. We can delay it if we have to, but if we're going to do it, we need to know because it's going to take 3 or 4 weeks to get all these different parties together. So
Alan, I understand your enthusiasm, and I'm not sure of the city staff's response, but this is a big project, and I think this included, how many trees total were in this plan? 60? And the airport? Mr. French's or the airport road? The airport road. Well, Mr. French's, I would like to incorporate it into the airport road plan because
it's part of the airport road plan. See, I'm very naive. Like I said, I don't understand how the city works. You know, I see a plan, and I go, hot diggity dog, let's go.
Sure.
So we were ready to go. We had our board meeting and said, hey, they got a plan. All we got to do is follow the plan and put the trees in the ground. You know, get a company and buy the trees and get them put in the ground legally, you know, with orange vests and stuff and cones.
Mayor?
Ms. Lejeune?
May I address Mr. French and ask a few questions?
Please.
Thank you, sir. The project that you're referring to, sir, is that for the airport road medians or
Yes.
someplace? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And do you know what kind of trees you currently have that you'd be looking to put in there?
The plan that I had was the one that had the date palms and the crepe myrtles and.
Are those the trees that you want to put in?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, what are the trees that you wanted to put in?
Well, see, there's so many variables. The curve, we wanted to do the curve by the airport. And I don't know what can go on that curve other than small crepe myrtles because of safety issues.
Excuse me one moment.
And I don't know, and then we had asked if we could plant an oak tree in place of the date palm that was on the plan. And I never, this is what I got back with all these requirements.
Yeah, and
from my question.
I think it's kind of been a bit of a miscommunication.
Obviously.
I wish that I had been brought in sooner. The plan that was done by the landscape architect was preliminary plan. So that's not the end-all be-all of the plan because we still have to sit down with the landscape architect, the city engineers do, and the traffic division do, and make sure that even the plan that we have as a preliminary is going to work because we're not sure yet if it does. As far as any other different kinds of trees, We are open to everything that the council has said, and we can now take that information and go back with the landscape architect and the city engineers and see what kind of trees, based on oak trees, hardwoods, specifically 8-inch diameter oaks of the water oak or white oak variety, I think is what Mr. Ron was saying.
Can I throw something in there about the 8-inch diameter?
Okay.
There's a couple of things we've noticed on live oaks. We planted some 3-inch diameter live oaks at the dog park, and a year later put a 5-inch diameter in, and they were almost identically the same size. So the smaller the tree, the faster it grows.
Okay.
Then the bigger the tree.
And we're
it's not as
right. We're open to whatever works there.
On that subject of the oak trees, what we had I've actually talked with the landscape architect. And when you turn onto Main Street by that bank across from CVS, there's some mature oak stands where there's like 3 to 5 main trunks. And we had talked about maybe going with smaller three-part stands, 3 oaks by the curbing at each, where there's curbing on the median.
Right.
And then those will eventually be those cool-looking, gnarly oaks that you see out at Rosemary Beach, if you know what I'm talking about at Rosemary.
So the point that I'm making is that at this point in the process, we are open to looking at all alternatives. That said, we were in a process with a timeline that was previously approved by the City Council. The City Council has the ability to change that timeline, understanding that all the things that we were going to do, which, if you look, fall, winter was to negotiate community partnership, which I'm hoping that we'll be able to partner with you guys. That would be awesome.
Well, you will be. I mean,
the point that I'm trying to make now is that if we're going to change the timeline, that needs to be direction from the council, with the council's understanding that if this becomes the priority project for staff, then this is the priority project for staff. So everything else that we're working on right now would need to be put on hold to make possibly, hopefully, the deadline that you're talking about in March. I'm not guaranteeing that everything would be done in time. The list that you were given, Mr. French, I promise you it was not to deter you. We have to take all these things into consideration, specifically because we don't want to break Destin water users' water main. We don't want to, dig into somebody's gas main. And we have to maintain them in perpetuity. So we have to make sure that everything is done right. And these are the things that we require of everybody who's going to plant a tree.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking, and one of my points I wanted to make tonight was, can the city tell us this spot right here will meet all the requirements, and then we plant the tree? Or as an organization, are we going to have to go through all those requirements to be allowed to plant a tree? That's all I want to know. Because if we have to go through all that stuff that I mentioned and you mentioned, I don't see how we can do it.
Okay, so now you're getting into a technical arena. If you don't mind, sir, I'm going to let Mr. David Campbell answer that for you.
Okay.
Alan, thank you for everything you do here. We appreciate it. I think we can go simultaneous routes here. We can continue with the overall landscape plan. We can determine how many trees did you say you had?
Well,
11?
11. We wanted to put 11 trees in, wherever, but mainly near the airport.
That's fine. So what we can do is determine what and where they can go first, okay? And incorporate that into the overall landscape plan and try to work with you to get all the utilities located, and I think we have most of them located. So we can do this in a reasonable amount of time while we're completing the rest of the landscape plan. I mean,
well, I surely don't take this to mean I was trying to put pressure on anybody. I just...
And we don't take it, we don't take it like that.
Okay.
I was just unaware, Alan, that I haven't heard all the details on what you had planned in the near future, so I think that we'll be able to work with you there.
Okay.
And we can work on completing the overall plan for Airport Road simultaneously.
Okay, I just, like I said, I thought the plan was done and in place and ready to go, so we planned a project. And we didn't realize that, there was much more going on. So, well, if you can, David, maybe I can just directly talk to you. If you could let me know if that March 10th is going to work, and if it isn't going to work, we'll work around it. We can delay it if we have to. I just
let me get with Mr. Davis.
Okay.
And the engineering staff, and see how quick we can make this happen with your assistance.
That is just awesome. I was just amazed at the different groups that work together on that dredging project and re-nourishment project, and that shows you it can happen. So thank you all very much. Any questions from the council for us?
Mr. French,
Ray, could I have my screen back so I can...
Mr. French, I just want to say that I'm hoping we're going to have other opportunities to partner as well. In my 2018 work plan, I have a tree inventory and tree canopy program that I'm going to start working on. I would love to be able to partner with your organization. Okay. And if the council would like us to go ahead and prioritize this project to see if we can get everything done by March, I will need direction only because you'd already voted on the existing timeline. So if you want to go ahead and give us direction to make this a priority, then we can try to push the timeline up.
Councilmember Marler.
A couple of quick things. One, I want to see oak trees, not palm trees. I'm not a fan of palms. And the only other thing is, you mentioned the curb. That's the one place I would not put any trees, because there's going to be a car up a tree, I guarantee you, the way that they come around that curve.
If we put some really big palm trees there, the car won't go across and hit the oncoming traffic. It'll stop at the tree.
I watched a deputy sheriff chase a car one time in my youth, and he chased it right up a loblolly pine.
Oh, wow.
Car sit right up like that, and he was local. As far as, and Mrs. Lejeune, I applaud you on one thing. You point out to the council that you have other things that are sometimes more priority than a tree. And so, I mean, I agree that if the council wants to make this a priority, which I don't, I like the idea, but I'm not going to take it away from priorities that are probably a little bit more than a tree. But I'm sure we can work something out to try to help them get the trees within a reasonable timeline. But as I said, I'd rather have hardwood trees if possible, and some good ones. I was looking at some of the native trees. We have a lot. I love pines too. Loblollies and long needles are also native to this area. I don't know if they'd work in the median strip, but oak trees give a better canopy. And ship oaks, that's another thing that's native to this area. If you go around, I believe the ones you were talking about at the corner of in front of Regions Bank there, those were there since myself and Mr. Dixon were children. So they were left there during the original construction. I think one or two of those are ship oaks. Yeah, Tuffy, we were children once, you know. I would prefer to see native. I would prefer to see native Northwest Florida trees versus native, South Florida trees, and that's my problem with palm trees. And they also take a lot more maintenance. So I don't want to make it a super priority, but I mean, I'm sure with the direction that we're going, that the staff will do their best job to try to work something out, but not to push other priorities.
Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would love to see, the trees you have incorporated into this plan, and also would love to see some of these crepe myrtles and other palm trees, eliminated from the plan so that eventually we can plant some oak trees, in their place instead of digging these up, later down the road and planting oaks.
I don't know if the city's ever considered on that curve, a guardrail. I don't know if there's any reasons not to put a guardrail.
I thought
but I mean, you could put trees if you have a guardrail.
Yeah, that's all I have,
just
man.
threw that out there.
Councilmember Morgan?
I'm okay with the timeline. I just, the most important thing to me is that we get this landscape plan right with trees that the community will appreciate and not gripe about. So, if y'all can fit it into Mr. French's timeline, great. If not, you can delay the ceremony, and I'm sure it'll still be just as impactful and appreciated. So, I don't think consensus is fine.
Ms. Lejeune, do you want a motion on this, or just, or
No,
you
sir,
have enough?
I was just looking for direction for council. I think that of what I've heard so far, and especially from Mr. Morgan, we're going to do our best to work with Mr. French and try to make the timeline. I appreciate the leeway that if it's going to take a little bit longer, then that's what it's going to take.
You're working with not just me, but a whole group of dedicated people that want to beautify our city. So we have a great board of directors. So.
Great. Thank you. Lee Moore?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Lee Moore, representing Howard Group. Very briefly, we echo the same sentiment. Oaks, not palms. We need a bumper sticker for Destin that says oaks, not palms. So we agree with that 100%. And the only other comment I'll make, other than the fact that we love this project, we love the dedication to the fallen servicemen. I think it's wonderful. We love the partnership between the nonprofit and the city. It's all great stuff, so kudos. But we do think that more native species are better. And also, we know that money doesn't grow on trees. I'm just full of them tonight. But since we're doing this, we would just suggest considering adding the side rights-of-way, landscaping in the rights-of-way. Got nice wide sidewalks on this roadway. It'd be great to get, and I don't know if there are irrigation issues or whatever other issues, but it would be great to get some plantings at some point as a part of this on the rights-of-way on the sides as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lejeune, you have the floor back.
The next is the ordinances, the readings.
Okay. We have the first reading of ordinances that do not require public hearings. This is ordinance 1803CC. Mr. Burns, you want to read by title, please?
Ordinance number 18-03-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to committee, boards, panels, and commissions, providing for authority, amending the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 2, Committee, Boards, Panels, and Commissions, Section 2-33, Appointment of Members, providing for the repeal of any inconsistent ordinances, providing for incorporation into Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And we're here on first reading.
Ms. Lejeune, explanation?
Yes, sir. I have Mr. Lance Johnson here, who has worked on this particular item for us. Basically, when the tree ordinance was approved by council, it created an independent tree commission. We now need to take the Parks and Recreation Environmental Tree Board and split it so that we can have the tree commission and then still have a Parks and Recreation committee. And if you have any questions, Mr. Johnson will be happy to answer them for you.
Councilmember Morgan?
I move to approve ordinance 18-03-CC on first reading and instruct staff to bring the item back on second reading.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any further discussion? Not, I call for the question. Unanimous, yes. We have the first reading of ordinance 1804CC, purchase of 603 Sandalwood. Mr. Burns, by title.
Ordinance 18-04-CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin of Okaloosa County, Florida, relating to the purchase of certain real property for the crosstown connector, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for City Council approval of a contract for purchase of townhome unit located at 603 Sandalwood Drive, Destin, Florida, and provide for an effective date. And we're here on first reading.
Ms. Lejeune, explanation.
Yes, sir. Our Deputy City Manager, Mr. Stephen Schmidt, has been managing this project, so I'm going to turn it over to him at this point for explanation.
The council approved acquiring all of 6 individual units in a townhome building, and that simplifies the acquisition process, and in that it keeps the city from having to maintain units when there are other units that are occupied. So we can actually take down a whole building at a time. This advances the project and gets us closer to getting fully funded from FDOT, and probably improves our chances for that. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions related to this acquisition, but this is just the first of 6 that we'll be bringing for you at some point.
Questions, discussion by council? If not, do I have a motion?
I have it pulled up here. I'll make the recommended motion. I move the council approve ordinance 18-04-CN on first reading and direct staff to bring it back for second reading at the next city council meeting.
I have a motion. I have a second. If there's no discussion, I call the question. Mr. Braden, 1 no, 6 yes. Motion passes. Under public hearings, we have the second reading of ordinance 1802CC, sale of alcoholic beverages within the city of Destin. Mr. Burns, would you like to read by title, or should I start with our one member of the audience that'd like to speak to this matter?
No, Mayor, we'll read by title, and then really, you were correct earlier, blue cards aren't privileged.
That's right.
So all members of the public can speak. Ordinance number 18-02-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to the sale of alcoholic beverages within the City of Destin, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for an amendment to City Code Section 3-1, hours of sale, providing for incorporation into the City Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is second reading and a public hearing.
Thank you. Ms. Lejeune, explanation.
Yes, sir. There's been no changes to when the council heard this at the last meeting. This just changes the hours that alcohol can be sold on Sunday. It makes us the same as Fort Walton Beach and allows our local businesses to be competitive with our neighboring city.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Any member of the public would like to speak can do so. Christina Weeks gave me a card if she'd like to lead us off. Ray, I'm locked up again.
I'm Christina Wilkes. I have the Texaco and Chevrons in Destin. I'd like to thank y'all for letting me come speak tonight. We, like I said last time I was here, I just want to keep the sales here where we're not sending them to Fort Walton, we're not sending them to Walton County. Also to make sure that we're not turning our customers away. as we're standing on this side of the counter and they're standing on that side, it's hard to tell them, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that, and send them somewhere else. So I would like to be able to try to keep our sales in Destin and sell earlier on Sundays. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and make the recommended motion. I move that the City Council approve Ordinance 18-02-CC on second reading.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Mr. Foreman?
Did I understand it that this is the same as Okaloosa County also?
Not unincorporated, though.
County's still going to be one.
Is the county still under the old rules that we're trying to pass? Okay.
Not seeing any further discussion, I'll call the vote. Two noes, 5 yes, passes. Mr. Burns, I did fail to ask if there was any other members of the public that wanted to speak. Are we sufficient?
You might as well ask.
Is there any other member that would like to speak on this matter? Thank you. We move to the consent agenda.
Mayor, I just suddenly realized something we need to make sure of. Before our last meeting on this ordinance, and an article that was on the Channel 3 News that Mr. Destin was in, the gentleman that they interviewed was in the county. And I think we need to make sure that, well, we do the right thing and make sure that everybody knows who is and who is not in the county, so that won't have a problem of those people that are still in the county getting in trouble. Yeah, Publix, the beach liquors, the one in front of Home Depot, all of those are all in the county. That is if it's gerrymandered right there. That shopping center and up to the Clary building is and the track are in the county, not in the city, including Bubba Gump's and the and Joe's.
We can move to the consent agenda now. Nothing has been pulled. You can make a motion to adopt all of them.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I call the question. Unanimous, yes. Move to council comments. Excuse me. No, okay. We're moving to council comments. Councilmember Braden, as normal, would you lead us off?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple of things. I want to thank County Commissioner Kelly Wines for supporting us and trying to get Crab Island under control. Thanks for his help on that one. Also want to thank Gulf Power for continuing to work with us on trying to get a contract, and especially Mr. Bernard. It's been nothing but first class since the word go. And also, when we were discussing earlier tonight, the first item was the gentleman's trying to vacate the right-of-way. I know it took about an hour, maybe even longer, and I believe there was some people got frustrated because it did taken so long. But I think this council really wants to take the time with each individual, because that man, what he was trying to do was just as important as anybody else that brings something to that podium, and we want to dedicate that time to everyone because it's just important. I don't want to get in the habit of rushing through everything, and everybody, we're getting accused of trying to rush and hide something, or so I mean, I know it takes a long time, but everybody gets the same treatment, and we don't get to talk to one another, so this is the only time we get to talk, discuss things. So we're trying to be transparent and treat everybody fair, and it's taking time is part of it. I hate that some of these meetings run till 11 o'clock at night, but, you know, everybody's going to get the same attention, you know, regardless. It's just as important no matter what, how small it is, to when they come to that podium. But that's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ramswell.
Thank you. I just wanted to show my appreciation to the Short-Term Rental Committee. They've been meeting weekly for weeks, and I think I've hit on this before, but they have really done an outstanding job of trying to come together. And, you know, when we made our appointments, the idea was creating a diverse group of not just permanent residents, but also rental companies, people that maybe lived out of state but had property here. So really a good diverse mix of people that would really allow for hopefully a coming together of, you know, a mutually acceptable statute and ordinances in terms of, you know, occupancy, what do we think is allowed, trash, all that stuff, some of the things that we've already talked about here. But the goal was to get the folks that are actually in the trenches, you guys out in the community, together and develop this themselves amongst themselves so that it represented the cross-section. And I have just been so impressed with the discussions they've had. You know, I saw something in the paper about one of the sessions got heated. Well, healthy debate is a good thing, and sometimes people do get heated, but you know what? The goal was to ultimately come together and arrive at some solutions to present to this council, and I think they have just done an admirable job. On that note, I actually have been down to Tallahassee and was all prepared to speak on one of the short-term rental bills that was up. And it was really interesting because this particular bill presented by Stubbe is one that actually seeks to preempt all authority to the state. And so one of the concerns with that would be if they actually went forward with this, anything that we had in place for short-term rentals would have to also be in effect for all the others. You can't essentially have one set of rules for long-term, one for just single-family residents, and one for short-term. It has to all be treated equally. And that is a real concern for us because, as you know, Crystal Beach, Holiday Isle, most of the neighborhoods south of 98, that's where we see the huge, you know, spring breakers and most of the issues. In fact, I would venture to say almost 100% of them. I mean, certainly there are exceptions. But can you imagine if you live north of 98 in an area that does not allow short-term rentals, such as Indian Bayou, Indian Trail, Cal Air? Can you imagine if all of a sudden what they're experiencing over Holiday Isle, Crystal Beach, was your next door neighbor or across the street? You know, they're facing situations of 3 and 4 bedroom homes with 20 people, advertised as 20. Some of the smaller homes that were there have been torn down and created just large, gorgeous homes, but they'll be advertised as 14 bedrooms, sleeps 40, and I'm not joking. So, you know, if that ordinance moves forward, not ordinance, but actually statute and bill, if that was to move forward and made into a statute, that's what we would see all over this place. And, you know, people buy in their neighborhood in a certain area for a reason. And that really concerns me. I am all for property rights, and I want people to be able to do with their homes, you know, what they intended. But I don't think it's right to all of a sudden change the entire flavor of a particular neighborhood. That really concerns me. And so I was all prepared to speak for an amendment proposed by one of the senators named Simmons that actually would return that legislation back to the city. And for me, and I think, you know, the council has sort of talked about this before, and in fact, we have an ordinance or a resolution in place right now. Our goal is to not change the flavor. You know, we recognize that you buy in your area for a certain reason. And so I was really going to speak in favor of the bill. It turned out that it was very interesting, and this is one of the most chaotic committee hearings I've ever attended. They had 2 amendments that had been submitted. Then they had 2 amendments that were submitted and handwritten. So nobody knew what was even in those. We just kind of had to go, okay, well, what's happening? And in fact, it was so confusing that even one of the senators up there, when it came time to vote on one of the amendments to the Stubbe original bill, voted yes, and then she immediately turned around and said, that was the Simmons amendment, right? And they're like, no. So there was mass confusion. And ultimately what ended up happening was Simmons pulled the amendment that we were favorable to, which was quite upsetting. But with that said, the original bill, Stubbe bill, is going forward to the next committee. And when that comes up, Mr. Simmons, Senator Simmons, is going to again present an amendment. And I look forward to going and being there and discussing the issues again, because you know, it's a serious issue that could really, really change the entire face of Destin. And I don't say that to be dramatic, but I mean, really, if there's no zoning and no regulations on where we can have short-term rentals, this whole city could be short-term rentals. And we know that. I mean, tourists love it here. We love the tourists. But, you know, I don't think that we're all prepared to turn every single neighborhood into a tourist destination and have, you know, huge parties. But I won't belabor the point. I did just want to, even though I probably already have, but I did want to let y'all know sort of what was going on. There's a lot of concern across the state concerning the bill, and we're going to definitely stay on top of it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon.
Yes, I hate to bring up issues like this without first discussing them with the city manager, but the issue that I see is that the area, the piece of property next to the concrete plant where the property that was given to us by J. Odom, and it is a area where people park and they take their children down to the water's edge there in the bayou and launch kayaks from there, and I see that big time, especially in the summertime, warmer weather. And what's gone on is that we've dumped concrete there in an effort, I guess, to try to stabilize that area. What I want is to put it before the city manager and city council or whatever it needs to be done to see what we need to do about improving that property to be able to utilize that to its fullest extent. And I hope that we're going to do something with that concrete that's there now and get some white sand covering it up some way, somehow, before the tourist season or before our summer season sets in, where people can utilize that property. I do see a lot of people using that, and we do need to do everything that we can to make it usable for this summer. If you would please see what we can do with that, and I would appreciate it. Again, I don't mean to blindside you. I just saw it today, actually, to be honest with you.
Councilmember Foreman. I have nothing, Mayor. Councilmember Marler.
Just one thing. In support of our fellow elected officials, Fire Board member Rick Moore, his father, who is one of our native, well, actually, just like myself, one of the members of the founding family, passed away this morning, Johnny Moore. So I'd like to remember him and Rick's family, due to the fact that he's a fellow elected official. And that's about all I have.
Councilmember Destin.
Thanks, Mayor. Nothing really tonight. Regarding Mr. Marler's point, that is a terribly gerrymandered parcel right there. But good news for Beach Liquors is they are in the city. Just north of them, the Clary Building is, I think, exempted, and they're in the unincorporated county. We had Doug Rayner look it up, so
okay.
Well, good news for
the
them.
last map I saw still showed it in the county.
Yeah, it's actually it's curved out. It's wildly gerrymandered, but that was during the formation of the city back in the 80s.
Yep.
Councilmember Morgan.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
It's annual review time, and I know each member of the council has met with our city manager, which is really the only city employee that we were involved with reviewing and have discussed it. So I'm not going to go into a great detail other than the overall totals as we pulled them out. reflected a rating of 3.97 for communication skills, 3.58 for administrative leadership skills, and reflected a 3.63. I only read these off. There's a number of them, and I'm not going to read all of them. Is at 3, it's acceptable performance. At 4, it's exceptional. And as a group, we tended to rate Ms. Lejeune more to the high side. And as you're aware, all city employees were given a 2% cost of living increase, which Ms. Lejeune received. And they are entitled to up to a 2% increase. Actually, the city council can do what they please in this manner. It's not a limit. I didn't mean to place it, but generally either a 1 or 2% merit increase based on the scoring. I recommended to you that Ms. Lejeune get a 1% because of the scoring criteria. That's how we would have, that's the amount we would have given any staff member in the city that was rated and scored with this system. But I leave that open to you. I don't wish to belabor the discussion. I know all of you have already had and given Ms. Lejeune your evaluations and discussed it with her. Tonight, I simply ask that or suggest a motion to you that we set a merit increase for her. Discussion?
I'll make the motion, Mayor. Do you want me to read it?
Read it, please.
Based on the city manager's overall score of 3.49 on the city manager's performance evaluation, I move to authorize the city manager's employment agreement to be amended and executed by the mayor and city manager to be effective on the annual anniversary date of employment to increase the city manager's base salary by 2% cost of living and a 1% merit.
Second. We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Not seeing any. I call the question. I'm sorry. Oh, Mr. Dixon.
The 2%'s already been given.
Yes, it's already been given.
So the only thing we're going to vote on tonight is the 1%.
The merit, with the 1 or 2%. I think the motion called for 2%.
Well, I'll amend the motion as noted.
Well, it's already been, she's already been given the 2, right?
Right.
Okay, so only thing tonight is the 1% you're recommending. Is that right?
That was a recommendation. That does not bind the council to do so.
Okay, but the base salary.
Base salary was increased by 2%
already
with all the staff members of the city. That's done on an annual basis. And the merit increase is what we're discussing tonight, which can be between 0 and I assume whatever the council wishes. My recommendation, if we had taken Ms. Lejeune's score and applied it to the average city employee, they would have gotten the additional 1%. So,
right, and I'll let my motion be amended to reflect the 1% merit increase.
Okay. Councilmember Dixon?
That was it, Mr. Mayor.
If there's no further discussion, I call the question. Unanimous, yes. Ms. Cobb, Land Use Attorney.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney, Mr. Burns.
Yes, 2 weeks ago when y'all approved of the offer to Gulf Power to extend the franchise agreement, there was no deadline put on a response from Gulf Power, and so I was just going to get a motion, and since y'all did approve that offer through a motion, I was going to ask for a motion tonight so I can communicate in writing a deadline to Gulf Power's attorney. And I would recommend maybe the February 15th meeting in 2 weeks, or 15th or 16th.
Next meeting is February 20th, unless they have a special meeting on Monday.
I would recommend giving them a couple weeks, but you can always do it next Monday. I would just say give them a response deadline of before one of the coming meetings. So I would say that the Friday before, the 16th would be the Friday before the next regularly scheduled meeting. So I would ask that you give them a deadline of the 16th.
Discussion, motion?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Discussion? Not seeing any, I call the question. Unanimous, yes? Is any further, Mr. Burns?
I said, I already hit send. It's been sent out to them. So.
Okay, thank you. It's now, the floor is now open to the public. Anyone wishing to speak, please stand or give me a wave.
Mayor, council members, thank y'all. I'll try to make this as brief as I can, but I really want to...
I'm sorry, I know we all know you, but
right.
give us your name and address.
No, it's my fault. I'm Wendell Smith, work for Gulf Power Company. And really based on your last vote that you just did, I would assume, and that's why I wanted some clarification on it, that this has to do with the May the 19th 2-year extension that expires.
It was on the agenda. It was the franchise agreement extension that we sent to Steve a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so you all are asking us for a decision by February the 16th on something that expires in May.
Correct, to get some sort of response from you.
Was that an approval or just some sort of response?
It's a deadline. It's a pretty simple offer. It's just asking for an additional year. It's a 2-page agreement, I think. So.
Okay, and you're right, it is. But there's something that I want to make very clear to the council in an effort to educate everybody on how Gulf feels about that. That existing 2-year extension does not expire until May the 19th. So you're asking us for approval or denial of a 2-year extension or a 1-year extension, excuse me, some 3 months in advance. So
it builds on, actually, it would be a 1-year extension from this coming May. So it would be, the effective date is actually, if you come back with an approval, it would be 1 year and 3 months from February 15th.
Absolutely, that was the point I wanted to make. So what you're looking for is actually 15 months, and that is certainly within your prerogative to do that. But I wanted to give you where Gulf is on this and where we stand, and that is right now we are fully prepared to invest more dollars in the system here in Destin. And effectively, what you all are asking us to do is to put off those projects and do not invest those dollars. Now, the reason that I have such heartburn about that, and I explained to you all last time I was here, if I'm looking at it through the eyes of the customer, and there's some of them sitting behind me right now, and I don't invest those dollars, the question that I'm going to ask as a customer, what happens to my reliability? So you all, in effect, are asking us not to spend $2.7 million on the distribution system in 2 years. You're asking us not to spend additional dollars on the grid for the customers here in Destin. Okay?
Well,
so, why?
yeah.
I think you actually asked us.
That's a great, sure you are. Yeah, that's exactly what you're asking. You're asking us not to spend those dollars, and here's why. If you all opt to buy the system a year from May, right? So if you all opt to do that, that is certainly within your prerogative to do that. Then the price just went up. The price to purchase the system just went up. That's the whole issue. Well, in the purchase price, could we? Oh, absolutely we would. Yeah. So why would we do that now? Can we? We can certainly do that. Now, we'll be more than happy to do that. But what I'm saying is we're not prepared to sit here and say yes or no, we're going to spend those dollars. I'm not going to say yes or no that I'm willing to sign that agreement.
Are y'all rejecting the extension agreement right now? Is that what?
I'm not going to answer. I can't answer that question right now. The thing that I would ask you all to do is consider giving us until May to make those final decisions, to answer questions like that. So whatever you all decide to do, that is certainly within your prerogative to do that. But the thing we would ask is, go ahead.
Mr. Foreman?
thinking this through, the deadline that we're establishing for next week, or 2 weeks from now, 15th, I think it is.
16th.
Something like that.
15th.
I think what I understand that to mean is that that doesn't restrict you from coming back with a counter offer on those items that we have discussed in the past, as well as your comments on the extension. Is that?
Correct. There's actually two separate negotiations going on right now.
Yeah.
Chef Wright has communicated a franchise agreement to them with, I'm not sure if he put it in a February 16th is the deadline on that one, but this is a sole separate agreement. This is actually the agreement that Gulf Power kind of asked us to sort of come forward with, which is the extension, because it makes everyone feel safe about their power. But this is news to us that they aren't really interested in it from what it sounds like.
I hate to say it, but I missed the last meeting.
And my apologies, I should have said that up front. There are two distinct different documents. We have every intent of continuing to negotiate in good faith on the franchise agreement. So yes, we have the response. We got it on Friday. And we have every intent of looking at, there were some things that were a little bit different in there. But we have every intent of looking at that and responding to that within the given time frame.
So is your heartburn then that we established a deadline of the 16th? Would you be more comfortable if we had said effective May whatever and coincided with that?
May the 19th, yeah.
That was going to be my question. You made the motion.
Yes, go ahead.
My question was, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I promise you that. We were trying to make sure that we didn't go right up against this time frame whenever this contract ran out. We were trying to be a little bit proactive in trying to get with you and say, hey, look, let's have some more time to deal with the possibility of renewing this contract with you.
Right.
And the fact is that, you know, what difference does it make whether we do it, ask for that extension and you to give us a word that we can get an extension from you in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever we're talking about here? What's the difference to Gulf Power?
It gives us more time to look at options and see what our opinions are.
All right. Y'all a big company. I thought y'all could do stuff quicker than that.
We can.
Yeah.
We will.
Oh, so you're not wanting to?
Nope, that's not what I said. That existing extension expires on May the 19th.
So, City Attorney, I know this is awkward. How do you recommend we proceed, or do you prefer not to?
You've given them a deadline. They'll respond to it. So I just say let them see what their next move is.
Why do I feel like I'm playing mental chess all of a sudden?
You made.
In other words, your request, we go ahead and vote on the motion.
It's already been voted on there.
Oh, that's right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, since all of us voted yes, any one of us can ask to go back and re-vote on that, and Ms. Ramswell, since she made it, she could, the original motion, she could also do that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, that, in other words, we can vote to go back and I can't even think of the word I'm thinking of again. To go back and reevaluate, if you want to call it that, the motion we just made, and then another motion can be made after that, if we all vote yes.
Mayor?
Go back and rescind that.
That would be to reconsider.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Please.
Sir, at the last meeting, and I don't think that I underestimated the enthusiasm that Gulf Power had to extend to a 2-year extension. If it was a 2-year extension, would the February 16th deadline be acceptable?
I mean, you guys can establish whatever deadline you'd like, and we will certainly consider doing that. But I don't think a 1 year or a 2 year is going to make a lot of difference to golf.
Okay, I was just curious because as Mr. Burns had said, it's 2 pages, so I didn't understand why 2 weeks wouldn't be enough.
And we will certainly respond by the February 16th date. Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon? Councilmember Braden?
That's it.
I just had a question for the gentleman with Gulf Power. Why is Gulf Power coming to the council now with this concern of spending money? It seems to me like it's just no more than a ploy to cause more chaos amongst the community, is all it is to me. Because all of a sudden now it's this big issue of extending this contract that we're, we want to spend all this money, in the community, but you're asking us not to. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, you're not going to stand there and convince me otherwise that it's not, because why would you bring that up, that, accuse this council of not allowing Gulf Power to spend that kind of money on the infrastructure, and the citizens of Destin are concerned about that. That's all it is. I mean, because we don't have to have an extension on this franchise agreement as far as I know. I mean, we're just asking, somebody just made the comment that we're going to make a 1 year extension on it just so the community feels safer that, the power's not going to be turned off, but the power's not going to be turned off whether y'all agree to a 1 year extension or not on the franchise agreement. Am I wrong?
You're right. It's not going to be. That's exactly correct.
Well, they're just saying they're not going to invest in our infrastructure, so when their infrastructure fails, they can blame the council.
That's what it sounds like to me. I mean,
it's exactly what happened.
Mr. Destin said, I mean, you spend all you want. You spend another 20 million on it, that's fine. If we decide to buy it, then that's just part of the contract. I mean, if you put a whole new system in, the price just went up. I mean, we realize that. I'm just really concerned why you bring that for us tonight, that, y'all want to get this extension, and we got this $2 million we want to spend here and another $2 million there, and we're not going to do it. Just really frustrates me that why you'd bring that up here. Throws up a lot of red flags for me. That's all I have, Mayor.
Yeah, my board's locked up. Could you unlock me?
Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I think somewhere it's lost in the picture here. We've been making the issue that we thought your rates were too high as compared to other locations. Mm-hmm. So we put a 1 year extension on there, so our citizens are going to be paying that higher rate for another year. So that's a hard argument for me to swallow. I'd rather I can see from the viewpoint of Gulf Power, and maybe even in the interest of the city of Destin, that if you're going to invest in us as a community, you want a longer term commitment. And you're not ready to answer that question until we're able to answer your question on whether it's going to be a longer term commitment. Am I getting there?
You lost me, sorry.
Okay, here's what I'm saying is that there's no interest on the part of Gulf Power to invest in infrastructure or to deal with rates if we're not going to come to some agreement on the term of the franchise. Mm-hmm. Is that close?
I'm not following you. I apologize.
Okay, then I don't have any other way to express
but I do want to go back and make one comment, Councilman, based on what you just said. Right now, the last offer, Mr. Burns, keep me straight, okay? The last offer from the city of Destin was a 5-year buyout clause. So in other words, with the agreement that was sent to us, was a 20-year agreement where you could buy the system out after 5 years.
That's separate from the franchise extension agreement.
That's separate from, I'm talking about the franchise counteroffer that you guys proposed to us. So it was a 20-year agreement with a 5-year buyout. So my question is this. if we're going to sign a 1-year extension, we're already 1 year into a 5-year period. So is there any reason at all to sign a 1-year extension?
If you're going to agree to, I guess, accept Chef Wright's counteroffer that he sent to y'all, obviously not. Y'all could just accept that agreement.
Right.
Pick and choose. But we thought the franchise extension was a fair offer to y'all that would simplify everything.
I'm perturbed. I think a lot of us are. And we have had a great relationship, and I felt like we've all been very open and discussing things here. And this to me is almost like not a 360, because that would bring us right back around, a 180. And I'm concerned. I feel like something must have happened when y'all all left here and discussed things to kind of change the spirit. And I know you're not probably at liberty to discuss anything that happens outside of here, but...
No, I mean, I'll be happy to try to explain as much as I can, or again, I'll be happy to meet with any of you to have the discussions. But when you start looking at everything concerned, and you start looking at some of the things that has been asked for by the council, that Gulf Power is strictly not going to do. We are not going to establish specific rates for the city of Destin. Yet that was in the counteroffer. Okay? We're just not going to do that. We're not going to agree to underground the city for a fixed price. Yet that was in the counteroffer. So my question is, how much headway are we making? The city council in the city of Destin has had 22 years to exercise the purchase option for the system. And here we are down to what is being requested as just 1 more year. So where does it stop? Where does it stop?
Mr. Mayor, we are basically sitting up here negotiating this contract as we speak. Y'all are supposed to be negotiating this contract, and, we're not getting anywhere with this, I can tell you.
I would suggest that maybe we get Chef Wright back down and do the negotiations at a later date then. Any further discussion from council?
Just for clarification, the counter's already out there. They just have to respond to it. So
Right. We'll wait. We can wait and see the response and set up another negotiation date. Okay. Other members of the public?
Mark Robertson, candidate for Destin City Council. 2 things. First, my wife and I were invited to Tallahassee to speak on the Capitol in favor of the Stubbe bill. The speech in its entirety was published in South Walton Life this month, which everyone can read. Second thing, we have a family-friendly beach community with 3 major points of access. Destin Bridge, Gulf Shore by Holiday Island, and on Main Street. And those 3 points of access have a Chevron station with a lot of campaign signs, large campaign signs there. My concern is those Chevron stations are the largest distributor of pornography in the city. And I'm afraid that and I would hope that the city would review its obscenity laws. There's huge racks that start barely 18 and just change the age of the woman all the way up to age 50. And I just think that's not right for a family-friendly beach community, especially for oversized signs that are in an illegal part of the right-of-way, calling attention to those businesses, which again are the largest distributors of pornography in the city. Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a question, since you brought up signage. No, thank you. Okay, well, there you go, folks. He's happy to discuss others, but not himself.
Well, it seems like...
Sit down, excuse me, you're done. Anyone else wish to speak? If not, I adjourn the meeting.